You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the third installment of our live-action television series, Lightsaber Duel Rankings. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, the number one ranked lightsaber duel in my heart, Joe Hogan.
Damn, that's a lot to live up to.
I listened, guys. Listen. This was supposed to be a two-part episode. It was supposed to be, the first half was the Mando and Ahsoka stuff, and then the second half was going to be Obi-Wan and Acolyte. But then I talked for almost 2 hours about Obi-Wan Kenobi, which hilariously, because it has actually been like over a week since we've recorded, right? Because we recorded those two episodes back to back. Because Joe, you were off gallivanting and doing a gaming show, a retro gaming show, right?
Yeah, lovely time there.
Yeah. So we didn't record last week, even though an episode did come out. Crystal listened to the second episode, the Obi-Wan episode, and was like, I don't remember any of this. And so we literally so the episode dropped on Patreon, I guess it was on Wednesday, right? And then on the regular podcast service on Friday. So she listened to it, I think, on the Wednesday. I'm pretty sure on the Wednesday, but maybe on the Friday. She might have just listened to the regular podcast, even though she has access to the Patreon. But she listened to it, was like, I don't remember any of this. And that night we watched like 4 episodes of Obi-Wan. We were getting ready for Cassie's birthday party. So
happy birthday, Cassie.
Yeah, doing goodie bags and whatnot, and folding laundry. And so we watched 4 episodes that night, and then we watched the last 2 episodes the next night. So so it prompted like a full rewatch.
Nice.
And I'll just say, I made a bunch of like wild assertions about Obi-Wan Kenobi in the last episode, and then we rewatched the series, and like I'm here to just triple down on all of it. Absolutely 100% I'm correct from a certain point of view. But it was really, really cool. It was cool to have had that conversation, go that deep into it, and then almost immediately go into a full rewatch over the course of 2 days. And revisit all of that stuff. But now we're going to talk about Acolyte, which I'm pretty sure is going to end up prompting a rewatch of Acolyte, even though it just came out, and Crystal and I watched every episode. Like we literally watched the day of the finale. We watched the whole show. Like we watched it from maybe we started it the night before, watched like 2 episodes or something like that. But it's easy with Acolyte, because Acolyte, each episode's like 40 minutes, so like at most. And they're mostly, I think, around like 36, so it actually goes by really quick. You can watch through all of Acolyte in an evening, I think, especially if you don't have kids. Obi-Wan's also easy because it's only 6 episodes, and they're about 45 to 50 minutes each, I think. Which I hear a lot of people complain about, but I actually really like it. I like the thought of going back and rewatching Andor in advance of season 2 is daunting, because it's 12 episodes, right? And yeah, they're in 3 episode chunks, right? So like you can watch 3 episodes, and then 3 episodes, and then 3 episodes, but each of those episodes is like an hour. And so like you like what are you gonna do? You're gonna, so that's watching like a movie and a half, for each one of those arcs, right? Like I don't know. I look at that and I go like, that's a lot. That's a lot. Whereas like I can literally watch Acolyte in less than 2 arcs of Andor,
Mhm.
right? I so yeah, like I don't know. I kind of prefer it that way. I like it that way. That you can go in and just kind of like rip through. I like shows that you can binge in that fashion. But on that note, I mean, like I've been binging Star Trek: The Next Generation, and those are 44-minute episodes because that's
Mm.
broadcast TV, and those go by at a clip. Oh my god, do those episodes go by quick? I before I know it, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I've watched 4 episodes, and I'm like, what happened? Because you just get pulled in like in the they man they knew how to make a TV show back in the day because every episode would open with like the like, oh, this is just daily life aboard the Enterprise, and then something happens, or it's like, oh, we're just on this planet, and then something happens, and then like you go into the theme song. But like the second that you're into the theme song, it's too late. If you don't get out of an episode of Next Gen before the theme hits, you're watching the whole thing because somebody has been accused of murdering an entire planet, or the holodeck has made dinosaurs real on in the Enterprise. It was like some that's never happened. That's not an episode, but it should be. Yeah, like it's just like when they need to hook you before the commercial break, they actually do it. Streaming is kind of like it's lost that, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like there's almost this like, well, it's basically just a long movie, so you're either in or you're out, and it's like, no man, like hook me. I Some streaming shows get it. Like I feel like Stranger Things is really good with that, because Stranger Things will end on like a I immediately need to watch the next episode sort of
Yeah.
thing. I like especially the first 2 seasons, they were really really good at that. But these shows, Obi-Wan and Acolyte specifically, I would say, like Mando to a lesser degree, because I feel like each episode of Mando is very self-contained. Um, but Acolyte and Obi-Wan are very much like, they are so much better if you just like rip through them. Now, I'm not. That's not me advocating for them to do like a like um the full season drop. I still love week to week, because then we get the opportunity to sit back and discuss and ruminate and speculate as a fandom, and that's the most fun part of it. But yeah, after the seasons are done, like so many of these, I think like if you felt kind of on it, I say go back and just do like a binge. Because even if you took Acolyte and you did it in like 2 nights, right, it's like 4 episodes and 4 episodes, like yeah, I think you'd have a great time. um but let's get into our actual lightsaber rankings for this one. What do you say?
Yeah.
What do you
I
say?
if we must,
If we must.
if we gotta.
And we must. So, as I said, this one is going to be all Acolyte. So, we're going to be integrating these into our existing live action TV duels on our list. So, really quick, let's go down that, because I know that Joe and I definitely need the refresher.
It's been
But
2 weeks for us. Yeah.
yeah, I'll start at the bottom. I'm going to start at the bottom and we'll go to the top. So, I at the bottom of our ranking is Obi-Wan versus Vader on Mapuzo. After that is Mando versus the Praetorians from season 3 Mandalorian. After that is Sabine versus Shin on Lothal when she gets stabbed. We don't need to get into it. And then after that is Ahsoka versus Merrick on Cetos. Then Mando versus the Dark Troopers. Mando versus the Dark Trooper, a Dark Trooper, right? It's just one.
Yeah. Just one.
Yeah, Mando versus Gideon. Both of those from season 2 of The Mandalorian. Ahsoka versus Morgan Elsbeth on Peridia from the finale of Ahsoka. Bo-Katan versus Gideon.
Did you skip Ahsoka versus Balin? Or did
Oh,
I
I did.
just not?
Sorry. Yeah. Ahsoka
Okay.
versus Balin on Peridia. And then Ahsoka versus Morgan on Peridia.
Okay.
Which are both rematches, and their other fights are further up this list. Bo-Katan versus Gideon, which is season 3 of Mando. Sabine versus Shin on Cetos, which is the much better fight of the two. Mando versus Paz Vizsla on that the Halo, the Halo Mando fight. Riva versus Vader on Jabim, which, as I said, we did that full rewatch, and rewatching this again, God, what a good scene. Just what a great sequence. Um, Luke versus the Dark Troopers in Mando season 2, from the finale. Ahsoka versus Anakin, of course, from the Ahsoka series. Ahsoka versus Morgan Elsbeth on Corvus from season 2 of The Mandalorian. This is our top 5, starting with Ahsoka versus Anakin. So yeah, Ahsoka versus Anakin, Ahsoka versus Morgan Elsbeth, Obi-Wan versus Anakin in the flashback from Obi-Wan. Ahsoka versus Balin on Cetos is our number 2 right now. That's amazing to me. I had forgotten that we ranked that high, but it's
I
also
mean,
accurate.
it
It's
deserves to
accurate.
be there.
It's accurate. Yeah. And then Obi-Wan versus Vader on the unknown planet, and in the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that's our current standings.
I'm
But
pretty
now
happy with this still. I
I
don't. Do you still feel the same way 2 weeks later?
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. This is a great list. The only one of these that I think I would look at and go like maybe it should be a little bit higher is Riva versus Vader, because I do think like it's really really good. The choreography in that fight is pretty next level, but it is also like it's even more about the story than it is about the choreography, because where you're at in the story there, and the desperation with Riva and the absolute calm headed coolness of Darth Vader, and the fact that he and Grande are just pranking her. It's just a full on like, yeah, just a full on prank. They were just like, give her the badge, give her the badge, give her the badge, and send her down there, and then we're gonna come down and we're gonna kill her. It's like it's have you watched New Girl?
I've seen episodes of season 1 a long time ago. It's been a
one of
minute.
one of the, one of the characters, Winston Bishop, Winnie the Bish, to fans, Lamorne Morris's character, he doesn't understand how pranks work, but he loves to prank people. And when I say he doesn't understand how pranks work, it's always too far. It's always like, and then we cut his hand off, right? It's like no, you went too far again, Winston. And I feel like that's exactly when Vader and the Grand Inquisitor are in the room together and coming up with this stuff. It's like, yeah, and then we'll give her the badge, and then we'll take it away, and then we'll stab her through the chest. It's like, guys, but there's nobody around to tell them that they're going too far, because yeah. But it's such a great scene. It's so good. It is actually probably, like, other than like the absolute heart-wrenching stuff in the finale episode, like the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and then when Obi-Wan returns Lola to Leia, which I cry every time. It doesn't matter. I cry every single time. I've watched it like, it's got to be like a dozen times at this point, and like that clip, right? And it doesn't matter. It gets me every single time. But other than those two moments in the finale, that moment with Riva, I think is one of the strongest in the series. It's everything else that anybody wants to complain about with Obi-Wan Kenobi, I am like, I don't care, because we got that, and we got the fight between him and Vader, and then we get everything between Obi-Wan and Leia. Every single moment between the two of them is pure magic. That show, I can't. We did 2 hours on it already. We gotta talk about Acolyte. It's so good. Obi-Wan is so good, guys. I think it is the most underrated of the shows, but I let's talk about the most controversial in recent history, only because it is the most recent, which is the Acolyte. So I'm going to really quickly list off the fights that we're gonna go over, and then we'll
Hmm.
jump into them.
Yeah, I might need some clarification on some of them, which one,
Yeah.
like what we're talking about. So,
So we have and these are in chronological order in the series. So we have May versus Indara, which is the beginning,
sure.
the opening of the series. May versus Soul, which is the second episode when they confront her, and he and May have the sort of he never draws his lightsaber, and she has the knives,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of force powers in it, so that's
Mm.
why we're counting it. And then we have Chimera versus the Jedi, which is all of them, right? Like we're talking
Hmm.
about this is when all the red shirts die, right? Like that's what we're
Right.
talking about there. So that's the Forest Duel. And then specifically Chimera versus Jackie. Soul, I'm including the Soul stuff in Chimera versus the Jedi.
Yeah,
Um,
and Yord too, right?
and Yord, yeah, and all of that, right? But Chimera and Jackie have like a straight up one on one
Yeah.
in the middle of that fight, so it's a little bit confusing because the Chimera versus the Jedi, we're including Soul in that one, even though like that does technically end with Chimera and Soul in a one-on-one, but it's very brief. There's actually, if you really break it down, there's not a lot of just the two of them after Yord and Jackie are dead. Because Osha gets in there pretty quick and ends the fight, right? Um so yeah, so that's how those two are going to break down. But the Chimera versus Jackie one, it has enough substance that I think it deserves its own ranking. Kelnaka versus the Jedi from the flashback. So that's Kelnaka fighting Soul and Torben. Chimera versus Soul from the finale, and then May versus Osha from the finale. Those are the duels that we're ranking officially. Yes, there are other fights that happen in the Acolyte, but I think like Jackie and May is not, there's not quite enough there. Like let's just really quickly note, it's an awesome scene. Like it's intercut with Chimera fighting the Jedi in the forest. Specifically mostly Soul, I think. But that, and it's also intercut with Osha and your sort of fleeing and then coming back. Um, and but there is some really great choreography in that fight between Jackie and May, but but yeah, it's not quite on par with some of this other stuff because it's mostly just like a few flips and that sort of thing. Although Jackie absolutely shows herself as a badass in those moments, because it's like, yeah, she just May can't handle Jackie, and Jackie is a Padawan, right? Like that's the thing. Jackie is Ahsoka 2.0. Everybody knows that, right? Like
Hmm.
we'll talk about it when we get to the Chimera and Jackie fight. But yeah, I cool. Any clarification or questions?
Yeah, I think I'm
Clarify
good to go.
questions, as I was
Clear
about
for
to say.
questions.
No, we're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, let's jump into the first one, May versus Indara. So this is the one that opens the series. This is our introduction to this time period in live action, and our introduction to what I think is hopefully will become like a stylistic era signature, in the way that the original trilogy is very much the like sort of the fencing duelist style, right?
Hmm.
And then the prequels are the Errol Flynn twirly lightsabers. The sequels, a bunch of people are probably going to say, if you ask most people, they'd be like, the sequels don't have a style. The sequels absolutely do have a style. The style of the sequels it's like, it's unfocused power.
Hmm.
That's the style. If you go through all of the lightsaber fights in even the ones that aren't technically with Jedi, although Finn is now has Jedi status because of a Lego Star Wars special, because the sequels are completely disrespected, even I think at the moment by Lucasfilm. Hopefully, New Jedi Order will fix that. But I even the fight between the riot trooper and Finn, it's all like it's like untrained, unfocused, but raw power, right? Like
Hmm.
they're just like that's all of those fights. The Praetorians, the Luke and Kylo, I like that, and like Luke in juxtaposition to it, right? So that's the style for the sequel trilogy, and then for the Acolyte, bringing it back into this, the Acolyte is the Wuju, right? Like it's the kung fu,
Mm.
like Chinese cinema influence. They permeates all of the fights in the Acolyte, and in my opinion, elevates lightsaber duels to a height that I don't think we've ever achieved before. We'll get there. But yeah, so this is the one that establishes it. And Joe, did you went and saw the Phantom Menace in the theater, right? Recently
Yes.
for the
Yes.
re-release, and you saw the this fight on the big screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because that was what, that was like 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before the premiere of the series, I think. Um, so it was like really our first big. I mean, we'd seen a little bit of it in trailers and that sort of thing, but that was really our first like, hey, check this out, check
Mm.
out how rad this is. Um, I was excited for Acolyte because of Leslie Headland and because of like some of the stuff that she had talked about, and like it was at that point that we had gotten the comments, either from her, I think I'm pretty sure it was from the stunt coordinator, but from somebody who was like, oh, our goal was to meet or exceed the Duel of the Fates, right?
Mm.
And we all not we all, everybody on the internet was like, oh, poof, oh, all the scoffs and the clutching of pearls, of internet pearls and whatnot, at the very idea that anything could possibly be better than Duel of the Fates, the fight from the uh, I guess at this point, maybe now second most poorly reviewed. I don't know what the standing is, if Phantom Menace is more poorly reviewed than The Last Jedi. But on the point of everybody poorly reviewing The Last Jedi, let's check back in 25 years and see how people feel about it. Because now it's how could you possibly say anything bad about the Phantom Menace? When it's like you guys have spent the last 20 years, 25 years bitching about this movie, and now all of a sudden you all love it. Go back, we have whole episodes about this. But
Not even that though. I mean, the problem I had with that is if you're making new Star Wars,
yeah,
should your goal really be to not do better than previous
exactly, yeah,
ones? Like,
yeah,
do you
yeah.
really want? Yeah, no, we're gonna aim low. See
Yeah,
see how it goes.
yeah.
Whatever.
We all love Duel of the Fates so much that we're not going to try and make our fights better than that, because that would just be disrespectful. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then I saw this literally right after having watched Duel of the Fates, right? Like it's the end of the Phantom Menace, credits roll. Did they play it before? No, after, right? Yeah,
It
it's
was
after the
after.
credits.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
and
after.
so then like credits roll, you get through this brilliant, amazing score by John Williams, and then it's like black screen, and then like bam, now a special preview of the Acolyte, and it's literally just like, I'm gonna fight you, and then she just fights her, and you're just like, this is as good as any martial arts movie that I've watched. Obviously, it being Trinity herself, Carrie Ann Moss, in this awesome hand to hand fight. I love this fight. I think that this fight is really good. I actually think it's one of the stronger ones in the Acolyte. So if we were just ranking like within the Acolyte itself, I think it's probably like so tough. It's probably the fourth or fifth, but it's really, really good. Um, but only because as we get closer to the finale, we're gonna get unbelievable stuff.
Dude,
I
this whole show, the entire show, even the quote unquote bad ones in this show
Mhm.
are like
Hmm.
So well choreographed, man. Like it's really it was astounding to me
Yeah.
that they just they took the choreography so seriously and just made every fight just a pleasure to watch.
I am going to make a bold statement here, and we just went through all like our list of everything, right? I don't think that any of these fights that we have listed are under the number 6 spot currently. Currently, like if I look at the current ranking, we've got Obi-Wan versus Vader, Ahsoka versus Balin, Obi-Wan versus Anakin, Ahsoka versus Morgan, Ahsoka versus Anakin. That's our top 5, right? Luke versus the Dark Troopers is the next one.
Okay.
Okay. And I know that a lot of people have a lot of like sentimentality and emotional attachment to that Luke versus the Dark Troopers stuff. It's very cool. Luke Skywalker is awesome. I am this is absolutely no disrespect to that. I do think it's a very well shot sequence. Um but for me it lacks a lot of substance, right? Simply because we don't have enough of Luke's story at that point in order for there to be any context
Mm.
other than Luke Skywalker is here to save the day. So it's literally like it's as if you walked into Return of the Jedi and all you watched was the battle over the Sarlacc, right? That's it. That's it. You didn't watch any of the stuff with Jabba beforehand. You didn't watch the Rancor. You don't know anything about Luke Skywalker at this point, and he just comes in and he just kind of wrecks shop, right? He does the same thing in Return of the Jedi. So it's like it's consistent with the character. I don't have any problem with that part of it. It's the fact that like we don't have any of the context of when and where Luke is at any point prior to this, except for Battlefront 2. Like and that's kind of not very much, to be
Mm.
perfectly honest. He is kind of in two scenes if you really break that down, and we get a little bit, and he's I would say that Luke Skywalker is more the Luke that we know in Battlefront 2 than he is in any of Mando or Book of Boba Fett. But
Mm.
in any case, who is Luke Skywalker is an episode for a future date because I think we should dive into that. But I with that in mind, I look at all of these fights. The only one that I might put under that is May versus Soul. But like I'm basically saying like we could just take this whole list and just drop it into the rankings right under Ahsoka versus Anakin and like have a very solid starting point, I think. So for this one, so for May versus Indara, um that is basically where I would want to drop it. Is right under Ahsoka versus Anakin above Luke versus
Okay.
the Dark Troopers. How do you feel about that?
Um I don't have particularly strong feelings either way, honestly, on that.
Yeah.
I do think it ranks. I'm not gonna lie, I actually think Riva versus Vader is. This is hard for me to say because Luke versus Dark
Yeah.
Troopers is like probably my number 2. If it were just me,
Yeah, yeah.
it would be a lot higher up. But I would argue that I think Riva versus Vader is better than Luke versus Dark Troopers, and then I think May versus Indara would be between the two. I don't think it's as good as Riva versus Vader, and I think it's stronger than Luke versus Dark Troopers.
Okay, so do we want to make an official determination that we need to move Riva up?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's where I'm at,
Okay.
surprisingly.
Okay. All of this is acceptable to me because that's I mean I just talked about it at the beginning,
Mm,
right? That I think like we looked at that and I think it ended up in a very appropriate place, but then upon
mhm,
rewatch I'm like, this could
yeah,
actually be higher. So so okay, I give you that. So it's currently in the number 7 spot. May versus Indara
okay.
is in the number 7 spot, right underneath Riva versus Vader and above Luke versus the Dark Trooper. Cool. May versus Soul. Or did you want to talk any more about May versus Indara?
No, that's it. It's cool. It's
Yeah,
awesome. Well
it's a great
choreographed.
fight.
Great intro.
Yeah, it really sets the tone. It really sets
Hmm.
the tone.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, one of the more elaborate fights. And one of the things that I love about it is how it uses the the verticality, as you know, which great lightsaber fights tend to do,
Hmm.
because we're up and down on multiple levels, and so many sort of planes of action, even though it's just two characters fighting each other.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really really good. May versus Soul. This one's a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is um one of the reasons why I have this in here, and like, let's say, like, we don't have like Jackie versus May in here, is that this is really our introduction to Soul as a fighter. And it it's really funny because people went on a ride with Soul that, we were all comparing him to Qui-Gon early on, and then towards the end everybody was like, oh, he's actually the bad guy. And I mean, I think that that's reductive. I think that's an oversimplification of his story and of the story in this series. But I understand where people are coming from. I think the thing is that a lot of people felt betrayed in the same way that Osha feels betrayed. And then we come to understand May's perspective, right? Because, hey, guess what? It's really, really fucking well written. So I think that some people have lived that experience without realizing that that's the experience that they lived. But I what this fight does is it actually sets up a false idea of who Soul is, because Soul is very non-combative in this, right? Yeah, like, it's a lot of dodging, it's a lot of moving out of the way, it's a lot of non-lethal. So he's trying to subdue her, not defeat her, right? Um, and so, story wise, I think that this fight is phenomenal for what it does for the overall story, because of everything that I just talked about that it establishes. But in terms of choreography, it's very cool. It's very well done. Like we were saying, even the worst of these is still expertly choreographed. Like, every muscle in these actors' bodies are being used in the most effective and appropriate ways, for their characters and for the story. It's actually a masterclass. Like, um and it's one of those things where it's like, the original trilogy walked so that the prequels could run, so that Acolyte could fucking soar, right? Like, that's the thing, is that you don't get here without those things beforehand. And it's a progression, which is why it gets to be that much better. But I would say, like, this choreography and this fight is almost better than anything in the prequels, I think, because it's just like, there's so much logic to it. There's so much,
Mm.
like, everything actually makes sense. If you go back and watch the prequels, there's a lot of those fights where you're like, actually, if you look at that, there's a lot of twirling that doesn't need to be happening right now. But it's a style, right? It was the Errol Flynn style, which I love. So I love it as a stylistic choice. But in terms of, like, actual, like, martial arts, the martial arts in Acolyte is actually quite a bit better. But I all of that said, where do we rank this one? I want you to start this one. Give me an idea.
Man, again, Luke versus Dark Troopers is so peak for me, but I think this is just a better duel than that, because we're ranking duels, right? Like, as
Yeah,
a duel, this is better than Luke versus Dark Troopers. It's not better than May versus Indara.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. Okay, cool. See, I think this is actually going to be pretty easy. I think this is going to be pretty easy, which
I don't
is
know, man, because these upcoming ones are really good.
that's true. That's true. But it's easy in the sense that, like, we know the benchmark of where all of these are going to sit, right?
Yeah.
If we've just said May versus Soul, which I think in this list is the bottom of the list, right? of the Acolyte fights that we're ranking. Um, everything is above. Everything's gonna be above this. Yeah, this is where it actually gets a little bit tricky though. Chimera versus the Jedi. So you talk about this one. I want to
Man,
hear your initial sort of thoughts on this and description of it.
so this is our first Chimera fight, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this fight, I know he was fighting mostly cannon fodder, right? Like
Yeah.
these Jedi are there specifically to show how strong Chimera is. I was terrified watching this fight. He's so fast, he's so brutal, he's like unforgiving, and just I mean, like you said, every muscle, I mean, literally, you see his every muscle
Oh
in his
boy.
guns there.
Yeah.
Uh, dude, terrifying to watch. I never thought I would see a Sith or dark side user that I would be more afraid of than Darth Vader. For me, this one is top of the list right now. Until we get to the other stuff, for me, this is compared to everything we have ranked, is number one right now.
Do you think it's numero
I think
uno?
it's for everything we have ranked so far. I think it's number one, and it's really crazy to say that,
Yeah.
but it's just because of it was the sheer just intensity of this fight. And it's not just the nameless guys, right? He was bodying Soul, he was bodying Yord. Like this dude was so like everyone was so outclassed, even Soul to a degree, because of how
Yeah.
just unbalanced Soul was. And then just outclassed everybody else. Um yeah, he was a terror and a pleasure to watch, honestly. Yeah, for me, this one is number one right now because I
Okay.
just remember being completely not taken aback, but just like in awe of, and it's been a long time, probably since the prequels, that I was actually in awe watching a fight style unfold on screen.
Yeah.
Because like things like Obi-Wan versus Vader was very reminiscent of the prequels, right?
Yes.
Um Ahsoka versus Anakin was very reminiscent of the prequels and Clone Wars. So like it really felt like we've never seen like anybody fight like this, and it's the longest time I've felt that way, probably since watching the prequels in theaters.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I think it is. I really think for me right now it's number one.
Okay.
What are your feelings?
Hmm.
Because I'm not like,
Hmm.
look, I understand that's probably a very controversial opinion, so I am open to being talked
No,
out of it.
I okay, so here's my hesitance, right?
Hmm.
I think that one of these other ones is absolutely number one.
Okay.
Um, I and so
When you say one of these other ones, you mean ones that we have ranked or have not ranked?
one of the ones that we have not ranked yet.
No, I'm talking about right now. It
Yeah,
belongs on the list number one. I
yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
agree that there is a better fight than this one, but for now,
Yeah.
placing it in, it's the top of the list.
So yeah, this is my hesitance. This is my worry.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of recency bias on this one, right?
Okay.
It's new and flashy. That is not to say that the flashiness is without substance. I think it's absolutely like it deserves all of the fanfare that it gets for how flashy it is, and it's flashy in the right ways, right?
Hmm.
Because when I say that this is new and flashy, what I'm talking about is um cortosis, right? when
Sure.
when that lightsaber, when that first lightsaber, when he headbutts that first blade and it cascades down
Mm.
the helmet, I have literal goosebumps right now talking about it, because my god, it we have you and I are among on the planet Earth. How many billion people are we at right now? 7? Of the 7 billion people on this planet, Joe, you and I are probably among the like 1% of human beings that digest Star Wars in the way that we do, right?
Mm.
Like I think if you really look at it statistically, like it's like people who have podcasts, people who like we live and breathe it, right? Like both of us have like you work as an official Star Wars artist. I have worked as an official Star Wars artist in the past and hope to in the future. I like we are like on a different level of investment, right? Like
Mm.
not it doesn't make us better. What I'm saying is that like the amount of time and energy that we have put into our devotion to this ancient religion I is I notable. um some might say like a symptom of a larger disease, but I it's a problem. But with that in mind, I thought I'd seen everything that you could do with lightsabers. Like literally, I was like, you know, and even to the extent of cortosis in comics, right? I mean, like we talked about it when we were doing our reviews. The that Jedi Council series is full of it. The whole plot line is that this planet has cortosis, and it's a problem for the Jedi. And how are they going to overcome this? Their handicap not being able to use their most powerful weapon, but the whole point being you shouldn't be worried. You shouldn't be relying on your weapons to begin with, right? You're Jedi. Diplomacy is what you should be using. The Force is what you should be using. I So even having read all those comics and knowing cortosis and thinking about cortosis and all of that, the visual that they came up with where basically like looking at the lightsaber as a plasma beam, right? Because that when you get into the actual lore, if you were to talk to Pablo Hidalgo about this at length, he would tell you that according to many of the sources of lore, it's actually not a beam of light. It's like a contained gravity it's basically like what a lightsaber is like it energy goes through the crystal and then comes out as a beam of plasma, and then the emitter also is basically like a singularity that pulls it back in, which is how the lightsaber goes and then comes back in, right? So it's like sort of constantly flowing, and that's what the humming and the vibration is, right? So the idea that if you interrupt that, if like basically cortosis is, let's say, like in terms of like a magnetic field, right, is
Mm.
basically interrupting that whatever a magnetic field or gravitational field, whatever it is that the lightsaber emitter is doing to control that beam, right? It's interrupting that midstream, and so the beam literally like disrupts, and the plasma, like when I use the word cascade, I like that is the best way that I can describe it, because it turns into basically like molten light,
Mm.
right? Because like if you go back and you look at that, the beams turn to liquid essentially, and
Yeah.
like splash off of the helmet with sparks and all of that, and it's just like it was a thing I didn't know I needed to see until I saw it. So much of the Acolyte has this, like I mean, Leslie Headland just knocked it out of the park over and over and over in the series. But like this is one of those things of like I didn't know that I needed to see cortosis on screen as badly as I actually did. Right? Like once I saw it, I was like, how have we gone this long? How has this not been in everything? How come we haven't done this yet? Why? Why did it take this long to get to this? But it did. That's how long it took, and it's where we got to, and it's perfect, and it's exactly what it needs to be. So, all of that said, it absolutely ranks in the top 5 for that reason alone, right? For that alone. And then on top of it, you add in all of the story components that are going on here. Kymir's entrance before the fight even starts, right? We've got Osha, and over her shoulder, the music just kind of drops. And then this thing is out of focus in the background. And then you slowly start to realize what it is. And he enters. And from that point forward, as you said, terror, absolute terror. I mean, I said it in our reviews, and I'll restate it here. Darth Maul was previously my favorite villain. Darth Maul became my favorite villain over a very long period through many stories and in direct connection to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay. Chimere shows up and immediately threatens that. Immediately. From this episode alone, this fight alone, Chimere immediately threatens Darth Maul's number one spot. Which would, like I said, is a journey that took like a decade for him, for that character to develop to the point where I could say that like he's in my top 5 characters of all Star Wars characters, and he is absolutely my favorite villain. And then Chimere shows up and pulls this shit, and I'm like, I think this guy might be number one, but let's see how the rest of this series plays out. Then the rest of the series plays out, and I'm like, oh, 1,000% cemented at number one. Chimere is my favorite villain in Star Wars. He is my favorite dark side user. Absolutely. I mean, is he a villain? That's one of the most interesting parts. But is he terrifying? Is he scary? Is he the scariest dark side user that we have encountered? To your point, and yeah, I think this is controversial, but the two of us saying it on the same episode, I think might, start to wake people up to this realization. Yeah, he's scarier than Vader. Yes, he is scarier than Vader. I and Vader can be pretty terrifying, but Vader is also a silly guy. So I mean, Chimera is also a silly guy. I don't know. It's wonderful. Star Wars is the best, dude. Star Wars is so good. But yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, let's put it at number one. I have convinced myself through all
Wow.
of that it's
All right.
it is number one. It is number one. Interrupting that fight, we have Chimere versus Jackie. So let me explain in a little bit more detail why I think this one stands on its own and deserves to be ranked separately.
Okay.
Jackie was a character that I was kind of enjoying, but I thought that I had her pegged. I thought Jackie was like Spock, right? She was basically like Jedi Spock. She, up until this point in the series, there's a lot of like, well, yeah, that's a you know, that's a fine plan, Yord, but the logical thing to do would be to just let this happen, let this play out, and then we'll catch him, right? It's like, oh well, why don't we just send Osha in there? He thinks that Osha is May, right? Like Jackie is more thoughtful, and like to be perfectly honest, she's very unlike any other Padawan I think that we've seen, right? And I think that was fantastic. Like I think the way that was delivered to us was really cool, because it was this sort of like, oh, it's the High Republic. These Padawans are very like book learned, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting it's peace everywhere, right? Everything's totally cool. And I mean, like, yeah, in the books and stuff, there's conflict and that sort of thing, and this is after all of that. But we're talking about a Padawan who spent most of her time, if not all of her time at this point, maybe save for a few field trips or something, in the Jedi Temple, right? This is her first mission. We know that it's pointed, right? So when it got to the point where she would be fighting, she fights May, and that's our first indicator of like, oh wait, oh, Jackie's a bit of a badass. Like I think maybe we've underestimated this character. And then she shows up in this fight and takes over, right? Like she literally like jumps in basically to save Soul, and then proceeds to not only keep up with Chimere, who we've just seen absolutely house 11 other Jedi. How many went? It was 14, right?
Was it that many?
I think I there was a lot of them. There was a time, maybe not quite that many. There was at least 10 though, right? How many Jedi went? He decimates, like on screen we see him decimate at
Okay.
least 6.
So there's in the shot of all of them with their lightsabers on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only 8 in this shot.
Okay, is that it? I thought that there were more, but I guess then we've got Osha and Basil as well. Yeah, maybe that's more right. But he's in any case, it's still an impressive number, right? Like he's taken down like half a dozen Jedi at this point, right? Because Soul is basically like on his back foot, like it's almost over. Jackie jumps in and just like completely reverses the energy of this fight with Chimere, to the extent that she manages to get his helmet off, right? Um, and it is in that moment that you know Chimere is like, oh, I got to take this seriously, and that's when he pulls out the secret second blade, and that's the whole thing, right? That's the Sith. They've always got something sneaky up their sleeve. So yeah, like everything from the point that she literally jumps into the fight, because she literally comes in screaming through the air into the fight. I said before, she's Ahsoka 2.0, right? Like she is very much modeled after that character. Ahsoka is what Jackie becomes if this fight doesn't go the way that it goes, right? And I mean there are also big differences in their characters, because Ahsoka is much more sort of quippy and silly from the beginning, but also very like, shouldn't we, Master Obi-Wan says that we should do it this way, and then Anakin's like, Master Obi-Wan is an idiot, we're gonna do this the way I'm gonna do it. So like there's a lot of similarities there, right? But just in terms of like sort of the young Padawan girl that is like very, you know, well trained by the books sort of thing, but then is also kind of secretly this incredible ferocious fighter. I Yeah, I love this so much. I love this part of the fight so much. It is my favorite part of this episode, is the fight between Jackie and Chimere. um he disables her lightsaber, and then she pulls out, she's got Kilnaka's lightsaber, and so she just switches to that, and it just like the way that it pisses him off, right? The way that this child comes in and absolutely just hands it to him, and really like shows his overconfidence, right? I Regardless, she's outmatched. You know, all he has to do is you know, I have to put effort into this one. Okay, and what that really does is show us just how powerful he is, because he wasn't even trying with those other Jedi, right? Like he wasn't even, it wasn't even a contest at that point. Like those Jedi stood absolutely no chance with their garbage, you know, temple training, which is exemplified in Yord's line, where he doesn't follow the rules of combat. It's like, sorry, the what, Yord? What did you just say? Like, you said that with like in earnestness, like with a serious face. You're saying that like the bad guy doesn't follow the rules of combat, as if this is a fencing match, right? That's the and you're that line is in there because we're meant to take what Yord says as how the rest of those Jedi operate, right? Which is that like they have only ever crossed lightsabers with another Jedi in a controlled setting as friends. They've never had to fight somebody with a lightsaber that's trained in the Jedi arts in this way, which is just going so far to enforce, you know, the fight between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul on Tatooine, right? and how Darth Maul is able to overtake Qui-Gon so quickly, because Qui-Gon's like, oh, hold up. We haven't done this, right? And he goes back to the council and he's like, this guy was trained in the Jedi arts. I have never encountered anything like this before. And this is all it's like poetry, guys. It rhymes. It is not copying. It's intentional. Yeah. So Chimera versus Jeki, we've talked now at great length. It has only reinforced everything else about Chimera versus the Jedi, so that's good. Chimera versus Jeki, where do we put it in the ranking?
I don't know, man.
Above Obi-Wan versus Anakin? Below it?
I don't know if it's above Obi-Wan and Anakin for me.
Okay.
I do think it is definitely above Ahsoka and Morgan on Corvus.
Okay. I think so too.
Yeah. I think that's where I am at with it. But if you feel strongly that it deserves to be higher, I'm not going to be upset.
No, Obi and Anakin, there's so much story stuff going on there that's just like it's so fraught,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also a really well choreographed, great fight. Okay. Kelnaka versus the Jedi. In terms of story impact, I really like this fight.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of actual choreography, it has a couple of standout moments,
Mm-hmm.
but in particular the slow-mo of Soul leaping,
yeah,
turning off his lightsaber in what would have been a kill stroke, which is another one of those pieces where we can look at Soul and go like this, like Soul is very controlled as a
mm-hmm.
fighter. It's I think the most impressive thing about him, right? Very cool, lots of great stuff. I don't know if I rank it as high as some of these. Like I know I don't rank it as high as most of these other fights.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably under May versus Indara. That's my first instinct.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for it because I do think it's more exciting to watch than May versus Soul. But yeah, I think May versus Indara just beats it out.
And we can kind of also include a little bit of like the lead up to it in like Torben fighting the witches, right? Deflecting all that. Because Torben has some really great moments in the lead up to this actual fight, to when Kelnaka shows up. That's sort of like the inciting incident to get us to the point of Kelnaka fighting. So I would kind of lump it all together, and obviously like it's very much an emotional climax of the flashback arc of the story. So yeah, okay. I think we can drop it there. May right under May versus Indara, above May versus Soul. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to switch the order that we're going to talk about these. We're going to talk about May versus Osha first. We're going to leave Chimera versus Soul till last.
Okay.
Spoilers, I think, on that one. May versus Osha. This is a lightsaber duel with no lightsabers, right?
Right.
But this fight, there are two reasons why this fight, I think, deserves to be very highly ranked. The first is the story component of it. These two characters finally sort of coming back together and coming to a head and clashing in this way. The full reversal of their positions in terms of like one on the dark side and one on the light side. This fight, we go from rooting for Osha the entire season basically to rooting for May over the course of this fight. Like we really, because May is the one who's like, stop, we should talk, right? But Osha is the one that's like, you did all these bad things and I'm gonna make you pay for it, right? Like she's very, very much giving into the dark side already at this point, and it's only going to get worse from here, right? Yeah, that's part of it. That's a big part of it. The choreography, like I think we've talked so much about choreography already in this conversation, and how Acolyte is not top tier. It is the top tier. I now think, like, I personally am of the opinion, and I will fight with people about this, everything that comes after this is measured against this high watermark. Like, this is the new benchmark for Star Wars fight choreography.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, I look at the MCU and Shang-Chi came in and did obviously the exact same thing that this does, right? Like, it brought in all of the and listen, I know that a lot of my personal bias is coming in here. I am a massive Chinese cinema, like, martial arts fan, and I have been since I was a teenager. So starting really with Jackie Chan, but then through Jackie Chan, into Bruce Lee and Jet Li and oh man, his name just fell out of my head. From Rogue One.
Oh, Ip Man.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God.
right. It just happened to me too.
Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen, thank you, Donnie
Okay.
Yen. Like Ip Man being like, come on, like Ip Man is actually probably the best martial arts franchise that exists. Like, if you haven't watched Ip Man, go watch those movies. Like, yeah, Donnie Yen is the best, literally the best. So underutilized in Rogue One. If there's one thing about Rogue One that drives me absolutely nuts, it's the way that they completely rewrote Jin's character in the third act, and all of a sudden she's just Princess Leia. But if there's a second thing in Rogue One that drives me absolutely bonkers, is that you have Donnie Yen in that movie, and you get one scene where he does anything remotely Donnie Yen, and it's in, like, the beginning of the second act, and then he doesn't do anything else for the rest of the movie. I mean, like, he gives a great performance. He's my favorite character in that film, but like he's awesome in that movie. But yeah, like, what a waste! What a waste of the most supreme martial arts talent, I think, ever. But anyways, back to the Acolyte. We go, like, the choreography is it's the new high watermark for fight choreography in Star Wars. Everything else has to measure against this, right? This fight is no exception to that. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things that I would point to that is, like, my evidence of it. The reason for that is my second point on this, which is that this is the same person fighting the same person. There are, like, yes, there were probably two people. I really hope that we get, like, a Disney gallery for Acolyte at some point, some sort of behind the scenes, because I want to see how. I want the. Did you ever watch the oh, what was that series? I think it was called Behind the Magic. Is that, or is it just Movie Magic? I can't remember. There was, like, a documentary series. It was about it wasn't just about Star Wars, but there was it used to be on was it on the Discovery Channel or TLC before TLC just became. TLC used to be the Learning Channel, for people who don't know.
Yeah. Back in the day.
For you Gen Z kids that think that TLC is just, I think, like, what, Housewives and stuff nowadays.
90 Day Fiance, My 600
Yeah.
Pound Life.
Yeah, nonsense. But it used to basically be a documentary channel. But it was it was more, Discovery was more of the, like, nature and science, and then TLC would be more of the sort of, like, social sciences stuff, sort of like documentaries about people and that sort of thing. But anyways, I think it was on Discovery Channel. There was a series. It was either Behind the Magic or Movie Magic or something like that. And there's an episode about The Empire Strikes Back that's, like, really specifically about The Empire Strikes Back. It reuses a lot of the same archive footage that the when the Star Wars trilogy came out on THX, they did the Making Star Wars documentary for that.
Okay.
That's on VHS. I think that Making Star Wars documentary might be on the Blu-ray set if it's not on the DVDs.
Is that Empire of Dreams? Am I remembering that correctly?
No, Empire of Dreams was made for the DVDs.
Okay.
Making Star Wars is different. Empire of Dreams was more about George Lucas, right?
Okay.
And about, like, the full sort of thing. Making Star Wars was very specifically about, like, the special effects. But in any case, Like I love that. Like that is one of the ways that I fell in love with Star Wars is like that THX box set came out and then I got that Making Star Wars VHS. I don't even know how I got it. I don't remember buying it or like being I just have it. Um and it's so good because it shows you like this is how Phil Tippett did the AT-ATs, and this is Cy Snoodles, and this is the Ewoks, and all the ships and the Death Star battles and all that stuff. Like it just shows you everything that we all know is like second nature now. But it really like broke down how ILM does what ILM does. I really need that treatment for this fight specifically because I
Mm,
want to know how they so seamlessly, so perfectly had Amonla Senberg fight herself,
mm,
right? Like and yeah, like I know there's a obviously they've got stunt doubles and that sort of thing. So I get the broad strokes of it, but I want to because they pushed it. They pushed it so far because these scenes are so kinetic. The camera is moving, the characters are moving, and yet there is never a point in it other than the fact that I know as a rational human being that is not that there are not two of her, right?
mm,
Like I know that, but if I didn't know that, I wouldn't know that,
right.
right? Like there's nothing in that fight that makes me go, oh well, that's obviously they like
Yeah.
here's my counterpoint. If you go back and you watch Revenge of the Sith, there are some very obvious moments where they have just like CG'd Christopher Lee's face onto a
Yeah.
different actor, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to slow it down. You don't even have to slow it down. There are two shots I can think of in particular where it's like that is very obviously a CG double, right? And it's not a
Mm,
CG double. It's a stunt performer, but like it's his face is a CG face, right? And by today's standards, it actually looks quite bad, but it hasn't held up. I don't think it looked fine in the theater because it was quick and film grain does a lot to hide that stuff, but in 4K at home, even streaming 4K, it's like yikes. I can see the seams of those special effects. It was the top of the line at the time, but it just hasn't quite held up. But with this fight, it's like it is truly perfectly seamless. And I know that a lot of that is because depending on which shot, like they it's not a face replacement, right? It's just literally her.
mm,
um but at the same time it's like I want to know the details. Did they basically shoot the whole fight from start to finish? Like do they have like a basically like clean versions of the fight from each, like with each character being played by her, and then like basically they're just like reversing positions so that they can just like kind of cut between the two, and then anywhere where both of their faces, they just have to go in and clean it up, sort of thing. Or like how do they do it? I want to know. I want to know the details. I just it's just I just think it would be so cool to get that behind the scenes of that fight specifically. But I you know intercut with this other fight with Chimera versus Soul. I mean, we have, by virtue of this fight, one of the absolute best transitions in all of Star Wars, which is when the two of them kick their legs together, right? They're perfectly mirrored, and they kick their legs and their legs cross, and then we immediately cut to the lightsabers crossed, and we're back into the fight with Soul and Chimera.
mm.
I, Star Wars is full of awesome transitions, right? I I I mean, like those first three movies are some of the best edited films ever. I would say that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are also supremely well edited films. Like just from a like if you're just looking at a very technical I sort of like assessment of editing, like they're really well edited. This is one of the best moments, one of the best transition moments in all of Star Wars. It's so good. I Yeah. So where do we rank it? Do you have any you want to add anything to this before we put it into the
I don't
ranking, or?
I don't know. See, I don't I don't disagree with anything you said. I just don't think I have the same level of enthusiasm for this
Yeah.
fight. Um, for me, it's kind of just above May versus Soul. Um, but like you've talked me into appreciating it a bit more than that. If you feel it's better than Kelnaka, if you feel it's better than May and Nandora, um, it's definitely impressive on a technical level,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate the story really kind of elevating the stakes for these two characters, and you know the context of everything just like elevates the importance of this fight. But at the same time, I mean, for me, for the series itself, I don't know if this is a hot take or if you just really disagree with me or agree, whatever. I felt like May and Osha's motivations were maybe the weakest thing for me in the
Mm-hmm.
show. Um, it just felt like whenever the story needed them to change their minds, they just changed their minds. Like I don't know. I mean, really, more than anything, it was May for me that she spent very little time with Kymir. He made some good points. Sure, she's there's that level of attraction to him and everything, but like killing Soul before really actually hearing him out and giving him a chance to explain what happened. I don't know. That felt a little abrupt. It felt like a little too much. So I felt
Yeah.
like there were too many things like that sprinkled through the series. And it doesn't bother my enjoyment of it. But it really like anytime I'm supposed to care about May or Osha, I just kind of don't care about them as much. I think because like they just
Yeah.
kind of go any way the wind blows.
I feel you on that. Like I get where you're coming from. I totally get where you're coming from. Um, it's like that's not my experience with it, right?
Mhm.
That's not how I felt about it. But I'll just say this is a little bit of a tangent. It wouldn't be a forced perspectives if we didn't go on one. Okay, so what do you know about quantum entanglement? Probably everything from Mass Effect 2, right?
Quantum. I mean, I love Mass Effect 2. I don't know what the hell we're talking about. What is quantum entanglement?
Okay, so the idea of quantum entanglement is that two molecules can basically be whether through natural means or I think that we've kind of figured out how to like I think we know theoretically how to do it. I don't know if we've actually done it yet, but I think they can do it in like a lab setting sort of thing where you can basically get two molecules occupying different space to behave in exactly the same way,
Okay.
meaning that what affects one affects the other. So in Mass Effect 2, it comes up, quantum entanglement comes up because the Martin Sheen guy, I can't remember his name. It's been so long since I played Mass Effect 2.
Elusive
The
Man.
Yeah, he can communicate with Shepard across the galaxy, like across infinite time and space, no matter where they are, because he has a communication device that's quantum entangled. So
Okay.
what it means is that like, and this is the theoretical science, and one of the reasons why we're trying to figure out how to do it is that like as it is right now, what you and I are doing here, it seems like we are instantaneously communicating with each other, but that's just because our internet is so fast that the transmission happens within seconds. It's actually like it's a little bit flabbergasting when you think about how quickly our internet connections are working because they are like you are on the other side of this continent and beyond that it's not as if it's going through lines from Vancouver to New York, right? Like it's going into outer space first into a satellite across to another satellite beam back down and then going through cables like being routed by like 16 different stations whatever. So we go like, okay, yeah, our communication is instantaneous, telephones are instantaneous, whatever. They're not. There is actually like there's lag, there's latency, it happens, right? It's very very low at this point, but it does happen. With quantum entanglement, that communication can happen across like literally all of space theoretically, right? Like this is all theory, we don't have anything to prove it yet because we can't travel that far anyways. But let's say you're on Mars, right? I think the transmission time between here and Mars with our current technology is 8 minutes, right? I at the absolute fastest under the best conditions, I think it's 8 minutes. I to send a, it might even be longer than that. That might be from something science fiction. It might be longer than that. But like let's just use that. It's 8 minutes, right? To send a signal from Earth, transmit it like directly beamed like a focus signal to somebody on Mars. If you had a device that was quantum entangled, basically you had a microphone and a speaker, right? Or like really you'd want to do it to the chip that's in between those two things. But let's just say, it's basically a string connecting those two things, except it's not a string. The string is the same string on both sides, right? So when you make a vibration on the string on Earth, it vibrates the string on Mars instantaneously at the exact same moment, right? um because the molecules have been quantum entangled. They have basically been on a quantum level, which is very difficult to explain and I don't fully understand. But on a quantum level, though, like they are essentially the same molecule, even though they exist within space and time in two separate places. May and Osha as characters, because they are, I guess we should have said spoilers for Acolyte at the beginning of this episode, but like, why are you listening this far if you haven't watched the Acolyte? May and Osha are the same person, right? Like that was the revelation, was not that they were created as twins, that they were an individual that was split into two. And as a result, they have become the two aspects of the Force, right? They are like, there are more than two aspects of the Force, but they've become the light side and the dark side. Um and they are analogously through the story, they are those two moons eclipsing, right? um what happens to one is affecting the other, and I don't think that either one is fully aware of that, right? And I don't think the other characters in the series are fully aware of it yet either. I think that we outside the narrative can see it, and even then it's like it is very much like subtextual, right? So I don't think that everybody is seeing what's there, but from my perspective, what I have seen in this story is that as one falls to the dark side, the other one comes into the light, right? Not because of anything that May is doing necessarily, but actually because of what Osha is doing. And it's almost like there's a momentum as a result, like because they're two objects sort of in motion with each other, and there's like a gravitational pull happening there between the both of them, because they are like entangled, like quantumly entangled, as you know um when Torben says like they have the same symbiote, right? Like, not that their symbiotes are identical, it's the same one. I read that as it's literally the same one. Like within the Force, their midichlorians are exact duplicates of each other. It explains why their hair is the same. Like that, like to me, it's like like they make decisions together throughout the story, throughout the series. They make decisions together, whether they know it or not. I think it's completely subconscious, but I do think that they are constantly affecting one another, right? um Through the Force, through their midichlorians. Obi-Wan says it about, like, you it's a symbiont relationship. What happens to one affects the other. So I look at it and I go, like, one of the reasons why some of the stuff can happen so quickly is because we're dealing with something supernatural going on between the two of them, which is what makes what happens to May at the end of the series, at the end of the first season, because we're gonna get a second season. We have to. We need it. We have to. Um, what happens to her at the end when Chimera wipes her memory? It I am very interested to see what the repercussions of that are. I personally think that the repercussions of that are like she has become purely innocent, right? Like she's back to being a 10-year-old. Quite literally in those final scenes with her, we see that she has sort of the mentality of a 10-year-old, right? She doesn't remember anything else. And so as a result, she's very innocent, very much on the light side. Like she's sort of been forced fully into the light, and it is in doing that, it is in that act, and I think it's one of the reasons why Chimera does it, why he agrees to it, is because I think that I don't think that he knows, but I think that being one of the few characters who's had as much interaction with Mei and Osha as he has, that he has a suspicion that if he pushes Mei towards the light, that it's going to push Osha further into the dark, closer to him, right? And so that's one of the reasons why by the end of it we can kind of we can see that, you know, like the two of them are very much aligned. So yeah, like I don't know if that's a better explanation of anything, but for me that's just sort of the way that I looked at it, is that these two characters, that there's a push and a pull, and literally as one makes choices to go down the path towards the dark side, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense for Mei to start to go back to the light, but I feel like as Osha is more influenced by the dark side, you see that Mei's decisions start to become more influenced by the light, right? That she's still acting out of self-interest as she was before, but instead of let's look at it this way. It's kind of like alignment in Dungeons and Dragons. So if you don't know this, in Dungeons and Dragons, when you're creating a character, you pick basically, like, there's sort of there's like we call it the alignment chart. So it's a chart of 9 squares, right? You have good and evil on your x axis, right? And then you have lawful and chaotic on your y axis, right? And in the middle of all of those you have neutral. So you have good, neutral, evil, chaotic, sorry, lawful, chaotic, lawful, neutral, chaotic. I'm confusing this by saying it wrong. But basically, so the center square is true neutral, neutral. You're neutral in terms of moral alignment. You're neutral in terms of like lawfulness, right? Which is how much you follow the rules, not necessarily the laws, but the rules as you perceive them. So at the beginning of this series, you have Osha all the way on one side. She is a lawful good character. She follows the rules. She believes in the rules. The Jedi. I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy. And then you have Mei on the other side, the opposite end of the grid of this spectrum, right? Like down in the chaotic evil, right? I am here to absolutely disrupt the order. I am here to kill and murder. Evil thing, right? um and then as they swap, their alignments swap. So when we pick an alignment in D&D for a role-playing character, the purpose of choosing your alignment is to give you something to fall back on when you have to make a decision, right? So you're presented with a scenario. You know, do we take this guy hostage, or do we just murder him, right? And if you're a lawful good character, you're probably like, we take this guy hostage, or we detain him in order to take him to the authorities and he'll stand trial, right? Like that's a very lawful good Obi-Wan Kenobi sort of thing to do, right? A chaotic evil thing is no, we just murder him. Like we're on an adventure, we're on a quest, he's in our way, let's just kill him. Just kill him and leave the body here, who cares? That's very chaotic evil, right? A true neutral character like a Hondo Onaka, for example, would be like, well, that depends. Is there profit in this somewhere? Right? So that's how alignment charts work, right? Like that's how your character alignment works. So when I look at Mei and Osha and the decisions that they're making, their experiences and their personality is going to do a lot of the work of how they make decisions, but their alignment in those moments, whether it's lawful good or chaotic evil, because we're playing with extremes because it's Star Wars, right? Like that's what ends up sort of like showing what the action is. So May, as I said, continues to make selfish actions throughout the entire series. I think it's very consistent that she's very much, it's about her trauma, her damage, her revenge, her sister, right? It's all like it is all about her personal relationships with things. Whereas Osha very much is about external stuff. It's about what the Coven expects of her, what the Jedi expect of her, what Soul expects of her, what Chimera expects of her. She makes a lot of her decisions based on external influence, right? But then it switches as their alignments switch. They start to make decisions. They're making those decisions for the same reasons. She's still making her decisions based on what Soul thinks and what the Jedi think, but now she's doing it from a chaotic evil point of view. And so that chaotic evil is coming out in ways like murdering Soul, right? Fighting her sister, right? So and that, which is very much about like the Jedi think that you're bad. I'm gonna and I have to do what the Jedi think is right. You know, like she's just very much ruled by what other people think. Um, so yeah, I see those characters as being very consistent throughout, but the influence of the Force, as we've talked about before, right? The midichlorians, when you're in tune with your midichlorians, they are communicating with you. They talk to you, and if you can quiet your mind, you can listen, right? And that's where like Anakin, like literally we've talked about this before, that's where Anakin's fall to the dark side. And I think Hayden's performance in Revenge of the Sith is so perfect because Anakin wants to do one thing. He wants to take Palpatine in. He doesn't want to fight Mace Windu. He doesn't want to fight Obi-Wan. He doesn't want to murder younglings. He doesn't want to do any of this stuff. But the midichlorians in his body are communicating to him, and because he's given into the dark side, they're communicating the dark side, and the dark side is going, power, control, do what you want to do. Right? Like just kill him, just chop his hand off, just kill those children. If you don't, you won't be able to save Padme. That's what you want. That's what you want more than anything, right? Like, and the dark side is if we go based on what the Sith code purports the dark side to be about, right? It's like if you do these things, you'll have the power you need in order to make the decisions that you want to make. You won't be ruled by this anymore. You won't have to listen to Palpatine. You won't have to listen to the council. You won't have to. That's what the Force is saying to him. Like that's what the dark side is saying to him in his head. So you see that conflict because he's going like rationally, he's going like, but none of this makes any sense. If like how am I going to save Padme by killing children? Right? Like where is the connection there? But via Palpatine's influence and then the dark side, it's going like, do it, and you'll secure power. And if you have power, you can control things. And if you can control it, you can stop bad things from happening. So you have to do this one bad thing, and then you can tell everybody else to stop doing bad things. You'll have that power, right? That's what the influence of the dark side is. That's the seduction, right? So if you think about that in light of everything else that I said about how the dark side is influencing Osha as she starts to lean more towards it, you can see how it's that slippery slope, right? Because especially I think for characters like May and Osha, and I think one of the reasons why the Jedi sort of have the edicts that they do within the code is because when you are untrained but still tapped in, it's so easy to mistake that voice, the dark side, for yourself, for your own inner monologue, right? Anakin has this external pressure of these visions of Padme dying that I think we're meant to believe. I think it's in the novels, right? Like or in the novelization that Palpatine is basically putting those there. That they're not real visions, that Palpatine is influencing those visions in order to manipulate Anakin, right? So he has that external thing of like that's sort of like putting this incredible pressure on him, and so that's why we see so much conflict in him. And really at the end of the day, Vader is the false identity in Anakin that's why Anakin is able to come back. With May and Osha, it's a different thing. It's like the pressure is not quite there in the same way, and so it happens in a much more gradual way. I think I actually like look at it and I go like, I don't think that there's sudden turns for any of them. I see the sort of gradients of like of Osha going from I'm a good guy to the Jedi are hunting me, should I trust them, to I guess I'll work with them, but Soul is clearly hiding something, to Chimere is a bad guy, Chimere is kind of a nice guy, Soul is hiding something, does that make him a bad guy, into I will murder Soul and kiss Chimere, right? Like it like there's a very clear path there to me, like a transition that happens over the course of the 8 episodes. But yeah, I don't know, have I done anything to convince you of my point of view
No,
with
fuck this
this?
fight.
um
Yes, no,
I
you've made very fair and, as usual, well thought out points. Like I said, like I'm not like it needs to be lower. It's just, for me, it's just
Mhm.
like it's fine.
It's
It's cool.
what I
It's a
just
great fight.
Yeah, what I just went into isn't even about justifying anything in this fight. That was just like you saying, that's why it's a tangent, right? You saying that like, I don't like May and Osha's motivations don't really make sense to me. I was more talking in that than I am about this fight specifically. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why I think I look at this fight and I can't, because this fight I feel like is the moment when these two characters come back together and we see them, and now all of a sudden like they've flipped, right? Osha is in essentially black, right? And it's dark gray, but it's essentially black. And May is in the civilian robes, which are white, right? Like it's visually we are to identify them as having switched places, and because they literally switched places. Man, the show's just written so well. But this is one of those things. I saw a TikTok yesterday where a person was giving a bad like a negative review of the Acolyte and saying that like, oh, you're making the fans do all of the heavy lifting. I disagree with that. I don't think that the Acolyte made the fans do the heavy lifting. I think that the Acolyte presented a very clear and straightforward story that is the tip of the iceberg of what Leslie Headland is communicating to us. And there's, as we've learned from so many of these interviews that she did, which are all on Collider. Maggie Lovitz over on Collider did such phenomenal work interviewing Leslie Headland basically every week at a certain point, and going in depth on this stuff. And like, this is the thing. I want people to really understand this about the Acolyte. When Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau are asked questions at something like Star Wars Celebration or in an interview, they give really dodgy answers, super dodgy answers. Dave is really, really famous for going like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
That's an
Right?
interesting perspective.
That's really
I don't
interesting.
know.
Right? It's 50-50 with Dave whether or not he's giving that answer because he doesn't want to tell you what his plan is, or there was no deeper thought behind it. It's 50-50. With Jon Favreau, 1 out of 10 times he actually knew what he was doing. I think that Favreau is very, very, very much tells stories by gut, and his gut is very reliable in that respect, because he's made some really, really good movies. He's also made some very poor choices in his storytelling over the years, right? And so like there, it's like that's how you get it. That's how you get a filmmaker who can make Iron Man and Iron Man 2, right? And like Iron Man 2, I think gets way more flack than it deserves. I think it's a fine movie. Like I really like Iron Man as a character, so I'm maybe a little bit biased, but I think that Iron Man 2 is okay. Like I don't think that Iron Man 2 is a bad movie. A lot of people will say that it's a bad movie. I think it's far from a bad movie, but I think that a lot of the decisions in Iron Man 2 were informed by decisions that he made on Iron Man 1, as opposed to Iron Man 1 which is very much informed by like, you know, like very core storytelling ideologies. And so that's why Iron Man 1 resonates more than Iron Man 2, because Iron Man 2 is almost it as many people will say, it's replicating what Iron Man 1 did. It's like, oh, it's just the same movie again, is the tired thing that people say on the internet. But that's how you get that is that Jon Favreau, I think, is very much like, I think that he does have the fundamentals. He's Jon Favreau. I'm not trying to say that I am a better storyteller or filmmaker or anything than he is because I'm pointing these things out. It's my observation that he's kind of shooting from the hip a lot of the time, and as a result, when he collaborates with the right people, he tells some really great stories. When he collaborates with the wrong people, it can come across as false, or as empty, right? And that's just because there's not quite as much. He's not doing as much of the homework. I think Dave does a little bit more of the homework, but I think Dave also over the years has kind of this is going to sound so negative, and I don't mean it to, because I really, really, really respect Dave Filoni as a storyteller and as a filmmaker. I think that he is one of the best that we've ever had, whether it's Star Wars or anything else. I think that he's a genius. But I think that one of the problems with being genius is that when you have success, then you start to kind of believe your own hype a little bit. It is the same trap that George Lucas fell into with the prequels. And I think that George can look back at that now in hindsight and recognize it. And I think that he's talked about it a little bit, but at the same time, he also tends to double down and go like, I'm going to tell the stories that I want to tell in the way that I want to tell them. And if you guys don't like them, then you don't like them. That's not really my problem. That's your problem. Like George's attitude in the last 5 years has very much been like people really criticize the prequels, and then he'll go like, yeah, that really sounds like their problem, not mine. I made movies that I'm happy with. I did the things that I set out to do. I brought the first fully digital character to screen in a realistic fashion. Like, I did that, right? I moved to a fully digital format with Attack of the Clones. I did that. Nobody else did that. I did that. Like, that's his attitude now, which like I totally applaud him for. It's like, yes, George, like fucking tell everybody where they can shove it, because nobody else is out there pushing the envelope in the way that he did consistently over his career. In any case, there's a little bit of like, yeah, but George, you're so into that part of it that you forgot that you're making movies, and that movies have to have tight stories, and that you need to give your actors direction. You got to do it. It's actually your job to do that as the director. And if you can't do that, then let Richard Marquand come in and do it. Let Irvin Kershner come in and do it. Right. But unfortunately, Steven Spielberg, when approached to do The Phantom Menace, because George did not want to direct The Phantom Menace, Spielberg turned around and said, George, you can do this yourself. So if you have a problem with anybody with the prequel, like anything with the prequels, if you have a problem with it, you have two people that you need to take it up with. You need to take it up with Steven Spielberg, who told George, no, you go and you direct that movie yourself. And oh my god, his name just fell out of my head because I said Richard Marquand and it's so close to that. The executive producer, that's always standing next to George in every shot and every behind the scenes
yeah.
What's his face? You guys know who I'm talking about.
I know who you mean though.
I can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me. But he's standing there all the time. It's so frustrating because it's like there's Richard Marquand who did he directed Return of the Jedi. Ralph McQuarrie, who is obviously concept designer for the original trilogy.
And then Rick McCallum?
Rick McCallum, thank you. They're all three of their names.
You were talking about the other guy, the guy who the guy who like co-directed a lot of the prequels, or at least Phantom Menace. That like the long blonde hair guy.
No, I think I know who you're talking about, but no. Rick McCallum stands there and goes like, "This is Rick McCallum is the lawyer from Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah.
Like the lawyer from Jurassic Park shows up and he's like, I'm going to shut all this down. And then the second that he sees a dinosaur, he's like, we're going to make so much money. Right. and Rick McCallum is that guy in all, like he's that character in all of the prequel documentaries, because there's one on each of the DVD Blu-ray sets, right? Like there are documentaries for each of those movies. Man, EPK was so good back then. It breaks my heart that we don't get special features in the way that we used to. But he's that character consistently, where he's like, yeah, slap it on the lunchbox, right? Like everything, every time they walk in to look at concept art, George is looking at it and going like, well, this one works for the story that I'm telling. And then Rick McCallum is like, that one's going to look really good as an action figure. I think he literally says that in one of them. I think it's in Attack of the Clones. I think when they see the clone troopers for the first time, like they see that design, he's like, that's a really good looking action figure, or something like that. Like there's literally a moment, I'm almost positive, in one of those where he does that. But in any case, that was such a huge tangent to get back to. Those guys, when they're asked questions about why they did a thing in a story, will give a really dodgy answer most of the time, because most of the time I don't think that they actually thought it through. And I will say that from the perspective of somebody who gets into a podcast with you and you ask me a question and I start an answer not knowing where I'm going, and then I get there, right? And so sometimes, most of the time, 99% of the time, I am Indiana Jones making this up as I go, right? Like absolutely. Some of the time it's articulating a thought that I've had that I haven't had the opportunity to, like, I haven't written this down yet, but it's like one of the trains of thought that's currently running through my head, like when we were talking about Obi-Wan last week. Leslie Headland has thought about so many of these things in the course of her and her writers writing this. I also think that's by virtue of the fact that they have a writer's room, which means that instead of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni sitting and writing a season of Mandalorian in isolation, just the two of them with only each other to bounce things off of. I mean, I'm sure that they have other people that they bring into the process, but not other official writers, right? When you have a writer's room, you're then forced to interrogate the ideas. And when you're forced to interrogate the ideas, you then have to do what I did in this episode with May and Osha, which is to sit back and go like, well, what is going on there? Thematically, we know why we're doing this, but what's actually happening? And then you have to start to think about it. You have to talk about it and discuss it in the writer's room so that everybody is on the same page. And in a good writer's room, that's what's happening, right? Is that those ideas are coming together. People are collaborating. They're, finding those points of conflict and then interrogating things that could be problems. It's one of the reasons why the show is more solid in terms of the writing than really anything else that's been made by Lucasfilm since the Disney acquisition, right? So yeah, I look at it and I go like there is thought, there is logic behind all of this. Some of it is on the surface, some of it is presented to us in very clear symbolism. Other aspects of it are absolutely the result of a conversation that happened in the writer's room that motivated the writers to do something. And so not all of that is going to make it into a show on screen, but it is absolutely there. And so then we start as an audience going like, okay, but you guys are using this archetype and this archetype, and you're using this mythological influence and this trope. Are you implying this? And in a lot of those instances where the audience has done that work, Leslie Headland has come back and gone, yeah, that's exactly what, and then talked about it, expounded on it, right? Which is where you go like, okay, yeah, that was really there. That was really meant to be there. We're not crazy, right? And she actually like wrote that into the show along with the rest of the writers' room, which I really should know the names of the other writers so that I'm not just saying Leslie Headland all the time, because she doesn't take sole credit for it. But as the showrunner, she's the person who gets credit.
And blame.
and blame. 1,000%. Just like a director on a film, right?
All their fault.
It is all their fault. May versus Osha, I think right above May versus Zendara. And you're okay with that, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lose sleep. It's okay.
Okay. Chimera versus Soul. Let's just
Chimera
go ahead and put
versus
it at
Soul.
number one. Let's just go ahead and put it at number one, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this is
Yeah.
number one. This
Yeah,
is as of right now, as of this moment, it is 10:20 a.m. Pacific time. What are we? Are we in daylight or standard right now? I can't remember. But on August the 15th, 2024, as of right now, it just flipped over to 10:21. As of right now, this fight, as far as I'm concerned, is the best fight in all of Star Wars. This is the number one lightsaber duel from a fight standpoint. Nothing beats Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul in Star Wars Rebels. That one to me is like, because that is not just, it's a hard argument for me to make against some people, because some people are like, but it's not really a fight, they don't really do much. But that duel is the epitome of like a duel with the Force, like a duel like the Jedi, right? I've talked about it a million times. It's not about the 4 moves that happen. It's about the billions of permutations of that fight that happened before either of them moved an inch, right? Both of them on both sides of that. It's incredible. But if we're talking about like a fight and like choreography, story, character, setting, not choreo, cinematography, like framing, tone, all of it. If we take everything into account, and I remove myself from the fact that I am an Obi-Wan fanboy till the day I die, this is the best fight in all of Star Wars as of right now. That's my assertion. You're probably not quite as extreme as I am on this, but I know that you also absolutely love this fight. And within the TV stuff on Disney Plus, in episodic format, right? TV episodic format, you're not going to get a better fight than this. I think
Yeah.
that's academic. I don't think that that's subjective. I think that's academic. That is an objective perspective. This is the best. It's the best, right?
Yeah,
So we put it
is.
So we put it at
It
number
is.
one.
Yeah, I
Now,
agree.
now that I've said that, I've made that wild assertion. I'm gonna make you, Joe, justify what I just said.
Okay. So I kind of want to jump back a little bit to when we were talking about how people like have issues with the fight style in this, and like wireframe and that kind of thing. And just let's go back to some of the prequel fights, okay? Because I can think of 3 off the top of my head that have very silly, smooth CGI people bouncing and jumping and doing things that human beings cannot do.
Yeah.
And people seem to have no problem with that. But as soon as you put a human being on, have them doing like a silly kung fu wireframe movement, now it looks cheesy and unreal and silly all of a sudden. I think it's really silly to get hung up on anything that doesn't look real, because anything that a human being can't do in real life is not going to look real no matter what. When you're watching the prequel fights, you know that Ian McDiarmid is not doing 2 unnecessary flips in his office while he's fighting Mace Windu. You know that. Your brain knows that. It takes you out of the moment because you're not expecting it, because it doesn't look right. But you're able to suspend that belief because we are given all the information that we need, visually and exposition, that we know that these guys can do things that we can't do. They do things that are above and beyond what the human physique is possible of. So they're going to move faster. They're going to be more acrobatic. They're going to be able to do things that we can't do. It's silly to be upset with one and not the other. Now, if you're upset with both, I also think that's silly. I think it's silly to... It's kind of missing the point that really all you need to take away from it is that they can do things that it's just telling the story, right? It's just a little seasoning on top of the story that these guys are way above anything that you or I or anybody on Earth is capable of doing. Even Earth's most fantastic athletes and warriors and whatever. We don't measure up against Jedi or Sith. Cool. That's all you need to take away from it. If that bothers you, I don't think you really enjoy Star Wars, honestly. Like, whatever. I'm not trying to be gatekeepy or whatever. But my point is, every era of Star Wars has that, the movie magic that has the cracks, right? That your eye recognizes it, your brain recognizes it. It might take you out of the moment, but like, it doesn't need to. It's not something that you need to get hung up on. That said, it really frustrates me to hear that people who love the prequel fights have problems with the style of this show. And that's not to say that you can't like what you like, you can't dislike what you dislike, whatever. I don't care. I just think it's really silly to let that hamper all of this really smart, well thought choreography and planning and execution of these actors and stunt actors and the cinematography of these scenes. It's so silly to let Duel, this wireframe, this is stupid. It's like a Kung Fu movie. This is Star Wars. This is not a Kung Fu movie. It's such a dumb hang up. And I'm now going off for about 3 minutes on my hang up that people are hung up on it. Anyway, all that to say, shut up. Just enjoy the fight. It's really cool. It's really well done. In terms of being the best fight, man, it just goes back and reinforces how terrifying, how strong, how brutal Chimere and Manny Jacinto are. Like, the humans behind this fight are also the peak of what, like, it's, their movement is so fast. And like a lot of these fights, a lot of lightsaber fights, it's, for example, like Palpatine. And I'm certainly not trying to, dunk on Ian McDermott or his stunt double or, Samuel L. Jackson, because those guys put the work in, right? They are actors. They're not stunt actors. So the fact that, we have guys like Hayden and Ewan and Liam Neeson, like actors who have acting chops, but put in the work and make that fight look good because it's really them performing it. We're really spoiled. Like, it's really cool that we authentically have actors really that are able to step up and do the job, right? They can deliver the dialogue and we believe them, and they do the fight and we believe that too. Like, we're really spoiled that we had, actors that are able to do that. Daisy Ridley, right? Adam Driver, like those guys stepped up to the plate. And it's not always going to be the case. Meanwhile, we have Manny Jacinto, who has great acting chops. From what I understand, comes from a comedy background, right? Because isn't he like, his claim to fame was like a comedy show before this?
Yeah, it was the Good Place is where most people know him from. He actually, when you look at his filmography, he's actually done quite a bit. But
okay.
The point where a lot of, and he's done some dramatic stuff as well. But the thing that most people know him for is Jason Mendoza, who is the most absurd comic character on a very silly show.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's his breakout performance. So that's where a lot of people like establish their relationship with him for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So you have an actor who's, I don't want to say strength, but okay. So a strength for sure is comedy. And he comes in and plays this manipulative, creepy, scary, but still sexy and appealing and kind of correct character, plays it really well, and is also scarier than Darth Vader with a lightsaber. That alone is mind-boggling. Now, that's a very subjective statement to make if he's better or worse than Darth Vader. If anyone disagrees with me, I certainly don't have a problem with it. But in my opinion, clearly a quote unquote force to be reckoned with, right? Like this terrifying, unstoppable force. And then you have Soul, who we've established through the whole series, like you said, to be a very intelligent, strategic, controlled, skilled fighter. And you have these two guys finally going at it, just the two of them, head to head. And Soul kind of has it more together than he did the last time that they met. And man, what a feast. What a feast for the eyes. Like, every movement from both of these guys is just incredible. It was like, I watched this fight so many times. It was one of those things where it was almost frustrating. I mean, maybe that's part of why I'm so like whatever about Osha versus May, because every time it cut back to them, I was like, I don't care about this. Go back to the other two. I want to see
Yeah.
Soul and Chimera fighting. Dude, it was so good. It's so good. And like, I actually really like the wire like fighting, because like, you've seen all these kung fu movies, we've seen all these, you know, martial arts movies where, you know, Jet Li or whoever does these amazing things that, like, even then we're able to suspend our beliefs because there's like this weird mysticism behind, you know, martial artists who've trained their entire lives since birth, and they're able to do these crazy feats because compared to someone who's never trained a day in their life, the things that they can do are just like astounding, right? And you're able to suspend that belief in those films. In Star Wars, it should be even easier because we have things like force jump, force push, you know, all these bizarre, crazy powers. Why can't two fighters, you know, jump off a bridge and just glide diagonally in the same direction and land and keep fighting, and then glide some more after a force push? Like, it's awesome. Like, if any franchise would do well and would be able to adapt wire frame, is it wire frame fighting or wire?
No, it's just wire. You just say like wire. Yeah.
Okay, wire. Yeah,
It's
if
wire
anything,
work is one of the ways that you
wire
refer to
work.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
if any franchise on Earth
Yeah.
could take that and it would make sense in universe, it's Star Wars, and it was so cool to see it in this series and in this fight, and it was awesome. And it wasn't even like that much. It was just like I said, it was just like seasoning to an already amazingly choreographed fight where you have amazing lightsaber choreography, you have like awesome cinematography, you have the intensity of these two guys fighting. It was so good, man. It was so good. And even the other force power, like, one of my favorite moments of the entire fight is when Chimera throws both lightsabers, and you just see Soul just kind of like center in and like almost suck the air around him before doing just like a star killer move, right?
Yeah.
Where he just uses the force and everything around him gets blown away, including Chimera and the two lightsabers. It's just like such a cool, satisfying thing to see. And like all the dirt and the leaves and the smoke are like brushed up and pushed up against it. It's like such an awesome shot and sequence. And I don't know, man. I have a hard time articulating why I like things a lot of the times, and I know you know that, and I know our listeners know that. But man, like, what a fun, awesome, exciting, high stakes fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is two performers along with their stunt team backing them up, giving absolutely everything that they have to give, both from a physical standpoint as well as a performance standpoint. I mean, like the emotion behind both of them in this fight is so important and not to be underestimated. And then the choreography on top of that is just like, you get a lot of these idiots on the internet, then they want to go through frame by frame and then go like, oh, you can see there the lightsabers don't even make contact. Oh, you can see there, like, if you did that in real life, then this is the perfect opportunity for me to stab you, right? And it's like, first of all, you can't do half of this shit at like 1/4 speed, much less the speed that these guys are doing it at in real life, much less the speed that it's presented to us in the show, because a lot of the time they ramp the speed up, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot of the time, a lot of the stuff that happens in the prequels, especially in the Phantom Menace, is filmed at like half to 75% speed and then played back faster so that it looks faster. A lot of action sequences happen this way regardless, right? There's actually like there's an art and a skill to shooting so that it doesn't look like it's been ramped up, right? Most car chases are not being played back for you at the speed that they were filmed. Most car chases are being sped up, and then being intercut and stuff like that in order to make it even more kinetic. You can go and you can watch some of the practice stuff with Manny Jacinto, and you can see the speed that they're actually moving at for the practice. I don't know what that translates into for the actual filming, but in practice, they are absolutely moving at half speed.
Mhm.
I Hayden and Ewan would go. They would go like
Yeah.
they went at it, and so I imagine that for a lot of this fight, one of the reasons why it is so good is that Manny Jacinto and Lee Jung Jae are going full speed, full bore. Like they both put the work in, they both put the effort in, as well as their stunt performers, right? So I think that like we can just go ahead and say like more than likely they're doing a lot of it at full speed. But the choreography, the intensity of it, the performance of it, that's all great. The artistry of it, like the literal artistry of this fight is unparalleled because it is beautiful. The only other fight I think that comes close to this one, I think that there are two fights and they both involve Ahsoka. I think Ahsoka and Morgan on Corvus is one of those ones. We talked a lot about it, that like the setting, the way that they interact with the environment, even though they're just kind of on this bridge, right? But the falling blossoms in the water and all of that stuff is very samurai. It's very Japanese. This environment that Chimera and Soul fight in is very Chinese cinema, of like the dust and the leaves and all of that stuff that gets kicked up as they fight, because that's one of the ways in Chinese cinema that they go like, okay, well, like, what are we gonna do this on, like a sound stage? No, like make it look like we're in a real place, even though we are on a sound stage or we're on a set somewhere, right? We're in an artificial environment. Like, let's sell it. And one of the ways that they often sell it is by having the environment interact back into the fight. And so, we see this in Star Wars a lot, but we don't see it to this extent, right? Because like you see, like, Vader hits something and with his lightsaber and sparks come off of it, right? Stuff like that, right? Like, oh, Luke cuts a thing and now fog is coming out and the environment is adding to the story, right? But with this one, it's like the interaction with the environment, because of that sort of that wuxia influence with the kung fu sort of style that's going into it. It really really becomes part of it, right? And that's one of the things I think that like kicks this up to the level that it does, because you have to think about how much planning goes into incorporating that stuff.
Mhm.
Most of the time when it's not incorporated, that is a choice. That is by design. Oh, we don't want to deal with all that. So, in Star Wars, we get a lot of environments that are very clean environments, right? Starships, Death Stars, right? They're very clean environments to have these fights in, and like obviously Kirshner understood the same thing that you know these filmmakers in Chinese cinema understand, which is like, we got to get a little dirty sometimes. We got to get a little gritty. We got, like, the environment has to fight back a little bit, right? And that's why Empire is number one on our duel rankings in for the films, because it's not just Luke and Vader. Bespin is a character in that fight, right?
Mm.
Whether you're in the carbon freezing chamber and you've got all of the lights and sounds and atmospheric effects that are going on there, or, you know, like, we get out onto like um the weather vane thing, right? Like, we're on that long platform and the wind is whipping and Luke is being sort of like tossed around by it, to a certain degree, and, you know, like, all of that stuff, like Vader smashing the window and Luke getting sucked out, right? Like, the environment fights back in that duel. The environment fights back in this one as well, right? Like the way that they move from the corridor onto that bridge and then into the courtyard, and the way that their fighting style in the corridor is one thing, and then, like, it's very frantic and very scary in that on that bridge, until Soul is able to find a way out of it, and then he does. And then this is the stuff that people are complaining about, this wire work, right, and the floatiness of it. But it's part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is that these people are so quick to look for problems that they are actually, like, looking the gift horse in the mouth, because that moment is meant to be juxtaposition to what we were just experiencing, right? We were in this cramped, claustrophobic situation of Chimere coming at Soul out of nowhere, and, like, Soul being on his back foot, and, like, how am I going to deal with this? They get out and he sees the courtyard and he's like, okay, cool. He jumps out and he floats backwards down, right? Like, no, does Chimere float backwards down first?
I believe it's Soul.
It's
Soul
Soul,
floats
right?
backwards first. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Chimere comes after him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, the purpose of that is Soul taking back control of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in my environment, and my environment is the cosmic force, right? And the cosmic force is going to slow this fight down a little bit. It's going to slow us down. And so, like, they're literally using the force to glide and fly through the air. We literally, a couple episodes before, saw Chimere descend like an angel, right? Like a fallen angel, right? Like, you give him wings and it makes more sense, but it's the force, so we don't need the wings. That's the whole thing, is that it's the force. Obviously he's using the force in order to control his body in that way, right? And this is the High Republic. These are High Republic trained Jedi. They are in control of themselves and the force. That's the point. So this, using this style, it wasn't just a thing of, like, Leslie Headland was like, I like kung fu movies, so I'm going to make it look like kung fu movies. It's a choice. It's an informed choice throughout, that she's going, these are the Jedi at the height of their power, the literal height of their power, because this is the story where they start to fall. This is the story that begins the downfall of the Jedi, right? This is literally the turning point. They, like, Soul is an example of a Jedi who is absolutely able to control the force in the middle of a fight, and to that degree. And Chimere was trained by the Jedi as well, was trained by Vernestra. We know this now, it's a fact, right? So, and then he's been trained in the dark side, and the dark side is even easier. It flows more freely. It feels more powerful. It seems more powerful. You're capable of doing things with the dark side that you're not with the light side because of that, right? So for him to do it, child's play, right? For Soul to do it, it's very much an aspect of that character and his control, which we've already talked about to such an extent. Like, that is, like, every other fight that we've talked about has exemplified that with this character. His whole thing, and this is the thing about it, is that, why is Soul so controlled in his fights? Because Soul is determined, and we don't know enough about his backstory in order to know why he is that way, but his trauma is about control, obviously, because he sees Osha and feels this thing and immediately needs to control the situation, needs to take her away from the witches, needs to protect her. That's all about control. It's all about control, which is about power, which is the dark side, right? And all of it's like, I know that it's hard for people to hear because they don't want Soul to be the bad guy, but he is the bad guy in this story. That's what the story was about. That's the whole point. And no Jedi is above falling to the dark side. To reiterate what I said in the last episode, no Jedi is above falling to the dark side. Falling to the dark side does not mean becoming a Sith. There are other aspects of the dark side. We know that because of the Night Sisters and this coven of witches. We also know that Brendok is a virgin. So like there's a virgins, and it is centered around this mine, and that it is absolutely spewing dark side energy and influencing anybody who's near it. Like, Brendok is a bad place for Jedi. It is a bad place for Jedi to go. And that virgins needs to be healed, and the dark side flow stopped. I don't even know if that's possible. You'd have to tell a whole story about it, right? But like, that's theoretically, that's one of the things that the Jedi are concerned about with virginces in the Force, is that like these points that are spewing out energy from the Force that are you know, can be gateways into the world between worlds, into the cosmic force, right? Like it, they can be sources of dark side energy, like this virgins, like the one on Octo, right? Like the one on Dagobah, like the cave. That is very much, it's a dark place. It feels cold, it feels dark, it feels evil. That's what the Virgins on Brendok is doing, and Leslie Headland has talked about it, that the backstory here is that the miners went crazy, basically, and that's why the miners are gone. That's why it was abandoned. That's why the witches were able to come here. It's what drew them to it. It's what drew Anastasia to this place, and she was using that energy in order to create the twins. The dark side is messing with everything. It is also, because Soul is controlling the Force in that way, I think my assertion is that it's making him even stronger as he gives in more and more to the dark side, which he is doing throughout the course of this fight. And his moment at the end of this whole scene with Osha, he is finally giving into it. He is finally giving into the dark side and speaking the truth, right? Which is, he did everything out of love for Osha because he loves Osha, right? That is not the Jedi path, obviously, right? He's not listening to the living Force. He was not doing things because the Force was guiding him. He was doing things because of an attachment to Osha. This is why the attachment thing is a problem for the Jedi. Now, abstinence is not a way of dealing with that emotion. Obviously, it leads to problems. It leads to this whole situation. It leads to Anakin. It leads to Kylo Ren. That, like, the Jedi saying shut it off, don't don't follow those emotions, it's out of fear, right? Which is the dark side. And so it's all flawed, it's all wrong, it's all incorrect. All of that comes across in this fight. All of that is part of this duel. All of that emotional content, all of that artistry, the environment that they're in. We were here before, and when we were here before, it was this courtyard. And I think some people forgot this. I think some people, if you didn't go back and rewatch that flashback episode, that first one, I think that people have like not erased, but like they're not connecting when we first see this courtyard versus the second time that we see this courtyard versus this fight in the courtyard, right? Because the first time we see it, it is this beautiful, vibrant, almost like market, right? Like,
yeah.
There's so much activity and joy and happiness. Oh, I want some
Whatever candy.
the treats or whatever, right? It's like, oh, my girls deserve sweet treats. It's this beautiful moment, right? It's this wonderful place. And then we see it in the course of that episode kind of transform, and all of a sudden it's this kind of this creepy place where we're doing this ceremony, right? And the Jedi are here. These interlopers have come in, and they're making it even more fraught, even more dangerous, right? And then the next time we see it in from the other side of the flashback, and we see the conflict, and then we see this fight with Kelnaka here, right? And it becomes this really dark place, and we kind of start to see it a little bit more for what it is. And then when we come back to it, it's a literal graveyard, right? I mean, like, there's no tombstones or headstones or whatever, but this is the place where it happened, where all of these witches died, and we don't see the bodies or anything like that. But everything is overgrown. There's vines and leaves everywhere. It's all dead, right? It's not the trees are not in bloom. It's not a beautiful place anymore. It's all of the leaves are they're dead and crunchy and blowing around. It's dusty. There's vines growing over everything. The force and the jungle are starting to take everything back, right? And that's the environment that this fight takes place in. And that the reason why the jungle is taking it back and is overgrowing things is because the Vergence is creating a scenario in which that happens, right? That's what we learn in that second flashback, is that the Vergence brought life back to this planet. These two are fighting in this, and it's very much like Duel of the Fates, where we're fighting for the fate of Anakin Skywalker, right? Will he be raised by Qui-Gon, or will he be raised by Obi-Wan, right? And this is very much like Osha's fate. And there's a little bit of an interesting thing here, because there's a little bit of like an underlying misogyny to Soul's position, because Soul is seeking to control Osha's fate, her destiny, right? Chimere, we can debate this. Is he doing the same thing? From a certain point of view, maybe, yes. From another point of view, he because of his sort of libertarian view of the dark side, he's seeking to free her from this traumatic past, right? That's what he's fighting for. That might be a delusion. He might be doing that. The reality is that he wants an acolyte, so he is actually doing this for selfish reasons as well. So like, you know, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of story there. This is why we need a season 2, because we need to delve more into Chimere and that motivation and all of that stuff. But for Soul, it's very clear. That like this fight is for, it's for the fate of May and Osha, but Osha more than May, right? He still has that sort of those blinders. And so the intensity of the fight, this is not a fight between the light side and the dark side. This is a fight between the dark side and the dark side. Like this is Chimere, who has fully embraced the dark side, who his power is flowing from the dark side, and Soul, who is turning a blind eye to his own path towards the dark side, his own descent, right? But literally the dark side influences all of this. It's all in that. And that to me is, I think, where the intensity of this fight comes from. The intensity of the fight between May and Osha, right? Like Brendok is a place of conflict for these characters. And so much of that is told in this story, so much of that is told in this duel. And then on top of that, everything that you said about the choreography and, you know, how expertly this is all done, that again, we get to see stuff that we've never gotten to see in Star Wars before. The moment where Chimere throws the lightsabers and you know, Soul dodges, and then Chimere's like, haha, got you, they're coming back, boomerang baby. And then he's like, oh no, you don't know who you're messing with. Like I'm Jedi Master Soul, and I'm gonna show you what a real Jedi Master looks like, right? And he just deflects them with the Force. He doesn't even use a lightsaber. And this is the thing. The whole thing of like, how do you kill a Jedi without a weapon, right? And it's like, the fact that Soul is the one that she kills without a weapon is actually like poetic irony. That's one of the great things about it, because so many of these fights that we've talked about in the Acolyte that involve Soul, he doesn't use his weapon, right? Like there are so his standout moments, the things we have called out, the fight with May, he doesn't use his weapon. The fight with Kelnaka, he turns off his lightsaber at exactly the right moment because he's not trying to kill Kelnaka, right? That control. This fight, he controls the Force, he controls the battleground, he controls the fight, he deflects these lightsabers. It's all there. It's all there. Soul is actually the example that Kymir wants May to look at. I don't think that Kymir realizes that, but you look at everything that Soul does, and it's like Soul fights without fighting so many times, right? Like the fact that he ends up being the Jedi that 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 lesson is used on, right? That she fulfills that, and it's not even May, it's Osha, right? But Osha does it. She kills a Jedi without a weapon, and she does. It's both things. She kills him with the Force. Obviously, how do you kill a Jedi without a weapon? She uses the Force. She chokes him. That's how she physically kills him. But what else does Kymir say? You killed a dream, right? And the end of this fight is it, and Kymir has pushed him to this point, right? The intensity of that fight that gets Soul to this extreme, and Soul is confessing all of this stuff, and he literally renounces everything about being a Jedi in those moments. Like he literally is like, you know what? Fuck the code at this point. Like, I'm gonna tell you the truth. The truth is that I did everything I did because I love you, to protect you. I did it for you. I broke the code. I broke the rules. I lied to everybody. I did all of these things. I made all of these mistakes. All of my friends are dead for these reasons, right? Like, and that you kill the dream. Kill the dream. So Soul is used as the example for all of that. And what is that ultimately getting at? What is the kill? How do you kill a Jedi without a weapon? You kill the dream. Like, what does that mean? What is the culmination of that? This is the micro example. The macro example is Revenge of the Sith. This is the first domino to fall that leads to that. Like, come on, man. People who want to say the Acolyte is not well written are just ignorant. Like, that's what it comes down to. It's two things. They are ignorant and they are willful, right? And those, like, to me, there is nothing worse in this world than willful ignorance, because people will do evil things, and they will do evil things in like the light of day, like fully conscious of the evil things that they're doing. There are people who will do that. There's a guy running for president that absolutely lives in that truth, right? But to me, the more dangerous thing, the scarier thing, the worst thing are the people who will look at someone like that. Don't bring politics into Star Wars. Shut up. It's there. It's the whole reason it fucking exists in the first place. It's the first movie is a protest against the fucking war in Vietnam. So shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And it just goes to this point, that willful ignorance. You are ignoring George Lucas, the guy who you claim to worship, your fucking false idol. You fake ass Christians. You want to worship not even a real version of George Lucas, because you don't want to listen to his actual words. You are being willfully ignorant towards his actual words, his actual message, the actual point of the story that he was telling, and you want to be willfully ignorant towards this guy who I'm not going to beat around the bush, to Trump, who is fucking, he's accused of so many sexual assaults, it can't be fake, it can't be a lie, right? He lies every time he opens his mouth. He literally can't not, like, it's his
Yeah.
state of being, like it is a compulsion of the highest magnitude, right? And yet these people who follow him want to just, like, they want the things that they want so badly that they are willfully ignorant to the danger right in front of them, and to the fact that they are voting against their own self-interest. And they think that it's in their own self-interest. They think, like, oh, but they're going to take away our guns. Nobody's taking away your guns, first off. And then second, but the things that he is going to take away are so much more important than those fucking guns. The things that he wants to take away, that he is saying in broad daylight through a microphone, recorded and broadcast around the fucking globe, about, come out and vote for me, you'll never have to do it again.
Yeah.
Come on. He's not even hiding it, guys.
Yeah, he's saying the quiet part out loud. He always has.
And so that, to me, like, willful ignorance is the worst thing that it is the worst thing that you can be, is willfully ignorant, because it is a decision to ignore, whether it's reality, morality, truth, any of that. It is a decision. It's a choice to shun that in favor of your, like your own desire, in favor of something that you that you want, that you think is more important. Whether that is, you think that it's because you're clinging to an ideology and a morality, while choosing to ignore, people who will say that they're pro-life, and then the second, but what about the second that life exists? Well, now we don't support it. Poor people are poor people. It's their own fault. So no, healthcare shouldn't be accessible to everybody, right? Like, it's fucking ridiculous. So that's the dark side, and that's the trick of the dark side. How did I even get into there? But whatever. I think it was via Soul as a character, right? Like Soul being just choosing to ignore his own, the reality that he's creating around him, right? Like, that's the danger there. That's the dark side. That's where he falls to the dark side, is that he is choosing to ignore all of those bad things that he's done. All of that, man, fucking, it's all tied together. This is the thing. And I think this is one of the reasons why this has sort of become a rant about the Acolyte, and we're going to wrap it up. But this is to me one of the reasons why I think the Acolyte and a lot of the modern Star Wars stories are bouncing off of a certain audience. They don't want this mirror held up to them. And as a result, they're choosing to, it was about writing. That's how I got onto the willful ignorance thing. Like, but this all ties back in. It is a decision to ignore or even, like, demonize these sorts of stories, because they're difficult. Because it's difficult when when the mirror is held up to you, and the reflection staring back is a monster, right? And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of people who've given into the MAGA cult and extremist conservative ideologies, extreme far right Christian ideologies, is that, like, a lot of these people went down these paths for altruistic reasons. A lot of them were just raised in these environments, and so they literally don't know anything else, and are terrified to because they've been taught to be terrified of any alternative. So I have a lot of empathy for that, and I have a lot of empathy for the people who have these negative reactions to these stories, because what they see reflected back is their own. Like when I watch it, I see the dangers of you know selfishness and
Mhm.
greed and going down those paths, right? Like that's what I see, and it's a thing that I go, yes, thank you, good, because it can be very, very tricky. And that's what Acolyte is about, is that like you can think that you're doing the right thing, and it can absolutely on paper look like you're doing the right thing. They were going to sacrifice those girls. That's the information that we had. You didn't respect another culture, and that's what led you to that conclusion, right? And that's what led you to making a decision that ended up ultimately causing harm to dozens of people and leading to the downfall of the Jedi, right? Like that's the story that's there. So for us, that's what we're supposed to be looking at here. That's what we're supposed to be looking at, right? And that's the lesson that we're supposed to be learning, is going like, man, okay, so when we encounter another culture, when we encounter a different ideology, we really need to stop.
Mhm.
We need to understand that most people want what we want: safety, security, prosperity. That's what most people want. Some people go about it by taking it from other people, and that sucks. And so for some of us, it's our job to protect the people that we care about from those people, right? But is that what the witches were doing? It's what the Jedi are trained to see, because they're cops. When you give everybody a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, right? That's the point of that. So we're
Mhm.
supposed to now be taking this allegory and applying it to police and going like, well, maybe we give the police too much power. Maybe we give the Jedi too much power. Maybe they should be regulated. Maybe the Senate should have oversight over this shit. Maybe the fucking bad guy at the end isn't a bad guy. What was his name? Uh Raincourt? Raincourt. Maybe Raincourt is the fucking hero that the Republic needed, and we ignored him, and that's why everything went to shit. Maybe Vernestra shouldn't be fighting Raincourt. Maybe Vernestra
Mhm.
should be working with him, because he's right. Because he's right. A fucking group of religious zealots are the number one police force in the galaxy. That's a problem. That's a problem. It's not that the Jedi are a problem. It's that the position they've been given, the authority they've been given, the power they've been given, that's a problem, right? That's what we're saying about the police when we say defund the police.
Mhm.
It's not that the police are a problem. They are. But that's not what we're talking about specifically in those moments. It's the power, authority, and the reach that they've been given, and the support to the immunity to any sort of consequence, right? These are the problems. These are the problems that need to be dealt with. And next season, when we get season 2 of Acolyte, I guarantee it's gonna be, oh, we're gonna do an internal investigation, right? Because that's the allegory, that's the analogy, that's what the story has to be in order for that allegory to play out. Yeah, yeah, people are reacting to the Acolyte, I think, in a lot of instances, because the bad faith stuff of like of like the far right is like they don't want to see their reflection. They don't want to see the bad guys. They don't want to. That's one of the reasons why that whole like with the Jedi are the bad guys in this story. It's like, well, that's not good. That's bad storytelling. No, it's not. It's great storytelling. You just don't like it. It's just a hard pill for you to swallow. But for those of us who watched all of the Clone Wars, we're already there, man. We're already there. When they sat in that tribunal and they said to Ahsoka, you've saved all of these lives, but the evidence here, we're going to ignore the reality, and we're only going to believe this evidence that's been presented to us, and we're not going to investigate it any further than that. You're guilty. You're going to jail, right? Like the second that Yoda and Mace and Plo Koon and Obi-Wan and all of these characters that we love and trust stood there on a dais high above Ahsoka,
Mm.
high above her, in a position of authority, in a hierarchical structure, and cast judgment on her, knowing full well that what they were doing was wrong. The Jedi have been the bad guys since that story. And who wrote that story? That was George, guys. That was a George Lucas story. So fucking shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Star Wars is awesome. I love Star Wars, and I love talking about Star Wars with you, Joe. Talking Star
No.
Wars at you, I don't know.
Little column A.
Little
Little
column A,
okay.
little column B. No. There we go. Here's our rankings. Let's go from the bottom. Obi-Wan versus Vader on Mapuzo, Mando versus Praetorians, Sabine versus Shin on Lothal, Ahsoka versus Merrick on Cetos, Mando versus the Dark Trooper. I don't remember the name of that planet, but whatever. Mando versus Gideon, Ahsoka versus Balin on Peridia, Ahsoka versus Morgan Elsbeth on Peridia, Bo-Katan versus Gideon on Mandalore, Sabine versus Shin on Cetos, Mando versus Paz Vizsla, Luke versus the Dark Troopers, May versus Sol, Kelnaka versus the Jedi. So we're getting into all the new stuff. May versus Indara, May versus Osha. It's funny. They're all just like in a clump right there. Four Acolyte fights right there. Reva versus Vader on Jabim. And let's see. I'm just looking to when we get into our top 5 here. Ahsoka versus Anakin. Ahsoka versus Morgan Elsbeth on Corvus. Kymir versus Jecki. And then here's our top 5 live action
There it is.
duels in the television series. Obi-Wan versus Anakin in the flashback. Ahsoka versus Balin on Cetos. Obi-Wan versus Vader on the Unknown Planet, the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kymir versus the Jedi. And our number 1, Kymir versus Sol on Brendok in the season 1 finale of The Acolyte. I feel good about this list.
I feel pretty good too.
This is pretty definitive. The thing that's exciting for me is what we have discussed in the future, because what we'll have to do is we're going to go through all of the animated stuff. It's going to take a while because there's a lot in the Clone Wars. So there's a lot. There's a lot to go through in
Rebels
the Clone Wars
too.
alone.
Rebels has a decent amount.
Rebels also has a ton, right? We don't have to worry about Star Wars Resistance, but I don't think that there's a single I don't even think there's a hand-to-hand fight in Star Wars Resistance. Anyways,
nothing in Bad Batch, right? Ventress only kind of spars toys with them. I don't think that really counts, but
yeah, no, we don't really. There's no, okay. There's nothing really in there either. We could maybe throw the fight between the Bad Batch and the Batter Batch,
but we got
the finale,
Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi.
But we do have Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi. We've got some really great fights in those. So we will do the animated rankings at some point, and when we do, after that, we may have to revisit because we don't know. Who knows when we'll do that, and then who knows what will have come out by that point. So we may have a new movie or a new show or something like that. Maybe there's something in Skeleton Crew. I doubt it, but maybe, right? Which by the way, the trailer dropped. Fucking phenomenal, and it's going to be my favorite Star Wars show. I feel it looks so good. I'm so excited. But we'll do an episode next week. We'll come back. We'll talk about Skeleton Crew. We're going to take the top 5 from the 3 lists from the saga rankings, the live action TV series, and then the animated TV series, and we'll take those 5 lists. We'll have 15 duels, and then we're going to rank all 15 of those.
It's gonna be so hard. That's
with
gonna
that
be
in
so
mind,
hard, man.
Yeah, with that in mind, the top 5 for live action TV: Kymir versus Sol, Kymir versus the Jedi, Obi-Wan versus Vader, Ahsoka versus Balin, Obi-Wan versus Anakin. That's our top 5 from live action TV. The saga duels: Luke versus Vader on Bespin, Luke versus Vader on the Death Star 2, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul on Naboo, Rey and Kylo versus the Praetorians on the Supremacy, and Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar. That's our top 5 there. Oh boy. Just that alone, just those 10, that's a doozy. Yep. That's a doozy to figure out where we are going to put these versus those. And then we're going to add in a bunch of the shit from the animated stuff. I mean, I'm telling you right now, first of all, Twin Suns is going to be high up there for me. I mean, it's my number 1, but we'll see where it ends up in the actual rankings. Siege of Mandalore.
Oh, dude.
Ahsoka versus Darth Maul. I mean,
forget it.
Ahsoka, like, we can just go ahead and say right now, that is probably the best duel in all of the animated stuff. It's so good. But Dooku versus Yaddle,
Yep.
pretty good. It's pretty good, you guys. It's pretty good. People who want to be like, Star Wars is pretty terrible since Disney took over. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, because I think that there's plenty to get into and to love. Star Wars is the best. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Man, what a doozy. This is a 2-hour and 40-minute episode. Totally worth it. Totally awesome. I thank you guys for hanging out with us this week, and we'll be back next week to talk about Skeleton Crew and we'll talk about some of the other stuff from D23 and Comic-Con and whatnot.
Did we talk 5 hours about lightsaber duels?
Yeah, we did.
Just for live action. That's not even including the movie ones.
Yeah. And you know why? Because they're fucking awesome.
That's pretty good.
They're awesome. The top 10 on this live action list is great. And this is all Disney stuff, guys. It's all Disney. So the next time somebody says, well, Disney Star Wars is stupid, just show them all of these fights. Just be like, really? Obi-Wan Kenobi lifting all those rocks and shooting them at Vader? Come on, get out of here. Awesome. That's it. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you for supporting us on Patreon. We will catch you on the next episode. See you there. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.